This episode is brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers. North Texas Honda Dealers, they're here to help.
He has time, launches it to the end zone. Touchdown! Terrence Williams!
The throw goes to the right side for Crabtree. It's caught. He he's going Red Raiders!
What's he up the 10? What's he up the right sideline?
He's got to go. He's tackled. Sam Houston wins it. The Bearcats capture their first FCS championship.
Hello, and welcome to the Republic of Football. I am your host, Ishmael Johnson. We are a show that would like to wish you a very Merry Flipmas to all our Oklahoma fans out there. It's a good day, right? Nothing to worry about at all. As I mentioned, I am your host, the Assistant Managing Editor, Ishmael Johnson. Right next to me is, trying not to choke on water, Mike Craven, our college football insider.
Did you see the Mike Leach press conference this week?
No.
He was like coughing through the whole thing, and he's like made a joke about it. That's how I feel right now. I have like a tickle in my throat that I cannot get rid of. So I apologize if I start coughing.
The person that's going to be responsible for muting his mic if he can't get that under control is Mallory Hartley, everyone's favorite Malpow. Mallory, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here. Oh, let me mute your mic real quick. No, I'm kidding.
Put the camera back over because, yeah, he has to roll away 5 feet that way. Anyway, we are a show.
The room. I don't feel like this was going on until I got in here.
Definitely. So anyway, we are a show that you can watch every Wednesday here, if you're here, as in YouTube, wherever you're watching it. Facebook, of course, Twitter. I'm going to stop trying to list all the platforms that we're on because I never name all of them. So.
You never get them right either.
I never
like
get
you
all
just
of
you
them
list
right.
2 of them and then you miss like 8 of them and it's just like, all right, well,
Very
we're on everything
very
pretty much.
millennial.
I
over
think
here.
we're on Twitch. I think we're on, I don't know. Anyway, regardless.
That
you're
bird thing.
Yeah, exactly. Regardless, you could be listening to us audio only on your drive or on your workout or whatever. Please subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Remember, we are available Apple, Spotify, all those things. Also, remember, we have our Sunday recap shows. We tend to do those early in the day on Sunday to make sure that you guys have some nice recap content for you on Spotify and Apple. So, past couple weeks, we have not had many headlines to talk about. It's typically good because it's middle of the season, so like you kind of just want to get to the games. Well, we do have some pretty big things to talk about now. First, before we get into the big mothership rankings that came out yesterday from the worldwide leader, got some AAC news. Bet you didn't expect that. The AAC announced that they will have 2 fixed in-state rivalries going forward as the new Texas teams come into the conference. Rice and UTSA and SMU and North Texas will play every season in the AAC's newly announced model.
Thank you.
I'm really upset that
you,
we're not going to
Mallory.
have UTSA North Texas
I knew
every
you'd
single
be
year.
with me on this one.
I was about to
Because
say.
it's become such a great rivalry
The
in the state
American
of
dropped the
Texas.
ball
And
here.
they really did. I mean, that stinks. Like, I'm excited to still have the North Texas SMU rivalry every year.
Sure.
Because it's just become a good rivalry. But I would like to argue that UTSA and North Texas is a better rivalry than SMU.
Much better
it's
rivalry.
more competitive, I'd like to say.
I think it probably is a bigger deal for UTSA because North Texas, as
Right.
you mentioned, has a natural rivalry to still
Right.
have. Like SMU, North Texas, I'd imagine, for a lot of generations is a much bigger rivalry, obviously, than UTSA since it's so new. But for us, I think over the last 10 years or so, UTSA North Texas has become one of the best G5 rivalries in the state. It happened organically. It's not because they're just close to each other. And so it does feel like the American dropped the ball here. This is why I like the 3-6 model, where you get 3 permanent opponents instead of 1. It's always hard to just pick one.
Sure.
But if it was 3
Yeah.
and all the Texas schools can play each other, like SMU, Rice, and UTSA was North Texas's 3 and, go around the circle, I think that would have been a better deal to do because they have 14 teams, so they had to figure something out.
Right, I was about to say. So I should say the rest of the press release says the schedule format calls for each team to play 8 conference games each year. Each team will face the other 13 conference teams at least twice during the 4-year cycle, once at home and once on the road. So, of course, that doesn't mean that we won't see that game ever, but it does become, every other year, every 2 years, whatever.
Boo!
So, yeah, it's not very fun.
I don't like it.
No, I don't either. It's
Stinks.
the fact that could be the conference championship game this year,
That's
and then
my
we just don't see it for
I know,
another year.
Right?
That's
Yeah, it really
insane to me.
sucks.
Like, yeah, I don't know. That's
Enjoy it while
It is on the
lasts.
schedule for 2023.
Oh, it is? Okay, so it'll be 2024 when they skip the year. So there's that at least. It also makes those games, more stress-inducing, too.
Yeah.
Because, damn, we got to beat these games. We're not going to see them for another 2 years.
I know,
We
right?
got to be able to win this one. So,
It's just, it was just picking up steam.
yeah, no, exactly. No, 100%.
Yeah.
It really picked up steam, I think, with that the Mason Fine UTSA drive. That kind of, really got the momentum going on
Right.
that. And then, ever since that year, it's been, peak, basically, for Conference USA. So, yeah, unfortunate, but it is what it is. All right, so I mentioned the worldwide leader. We got to talk about it, as much as I don't like to, because TCU is too good this year to not talk about it. College football playoff. TCU was announced as the number 4 team, making up for their stupid rankings last week that had them outside the top. I don't know, on the outside looking in. But we also said if TCU took care of business, things would happen around them, and they would be in, right, if theoretically. Obviously, we still have some things to work out here as far as the rest of the season goes, but TCU, if the season ended today, you would be in the playoff. Now, I think it's very coincidental, actually not coincidental at all, that they have their biggest game of the season coming up.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of this was the committee saying we better rank this team in the top 4 right now, because there's a possibility
'Cause
that
they
we
may
do not
drop.
talk about them again
Yep.
after this weekend,
Yep.
because they have number 18 Texas, who is the other Texas team ranked in the top 25.
Yeah.
Number 4 team in the nation, a 7-point underdog.
I'm just
Yeah.
This week
Yeah.
at Texas.
I'm just not fully convinced that TCU deserves a college football playoff start spot.
I think they deserve to be 4 right now.
Yeah.
I
I'd say
don't.
right
Until
now.
proven otherwise, I guess that's a
Yeah,
good point.
I mean, until they lose, they deserve to be up there. They're in a Power 5 conference, beating good teams. I just don't trust them to go undefeated, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's supposed to just be a screenshot of the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Yeah,
do
good
feel
point.
like they have the 4th best argument to be in the college football playoff right now, just because the other teams have a loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
I would pick Alabama.
I was about to say,
You know, I'd pick Clemson or
Right.
Tennessee or even
Right.
LSU.
right.
But they're undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's we've said our piece about the playoff before, but with the way it is formatted right now, right, the resume that they give us is kind of how you have to examine it. TCU deserves it, right? If this was literally any other year and Oklahoma was the unbeaten team in the Big 12 running through, we'd be like, yeah, of course Oklahoma's in, right?
We talked about it last week. You
Yeah.
put Texas's helmet on TCU,
Sure.
and they're absolutely 3rd or 4th in the
Sure.
nation.
And it did prove, when we said TCU just take care of business and you'll be in the conversation,
Yep.
that ended up happening, right? Tennessee loses, Clemson loses. Look at that. You're in the playoffs. So
One of Michigan or Ohio State has to lose when they play each other. You're like, it's right there for you. You just got to win out.
exactly. You got to win out, and we'll talk about that in a bit because, man, that is not easy at all. But I will say it is I think this is a very interesting moment for TCU fans because, all of a sudden they go from what's a Sonny Dykes team look like to holy crap, we're in the college football playoff. And so I do think whether or not this is a 1-week thing and they're out next week if they lose, or if they do make the playoff, end up running the table, going unbeaten, this is a pretty cool moment, right? You see your name on there, right? I know Tennessee fans were having that kind of existential crisis before they lost. They were like, we're in? This is real?
Gotta
things
mess
ended-
with your head too.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, right? It's then it becomes well, now there's no choice. You got to start thinking playoff, right? You got to start thinking about the season as a whole and what you could eventually do.
You know, you brought up a week or two ago about how would they handle the expectations and if they would start thinking about it too much. I think it's a good thing for TCU that they're an underdog.
Sure,
By a touchdown.
I think so,
sure.
too.
You know, it's like you get to 4th. I would imagine everybody's trying to pump you up. Everybody's telling you congratulations. And then Sonny Dykes gets to go to the locker room and go, nobody believes in us to win this game.
Right.
Now we're a bigger underdog. We're 7 point. I mean, that's not even close.
I know. I don't remember who the underdog was in the Tennessee-Georgia game, but we saw kind
Tennessee.
of how that
Yeah, it was
Tennessee
Tennessee.
was the underdog. Well,
Yeah.
I guess that kind of defeats my point. But, yeah, I mean, they get ranked number 1, and they go out and just completely,
Yeah.
It's
why we should use
Against
Vegas
Georgia.
to make these rankings and not Condoleezza Rice.
For some context, the second rankings a year ago, Georgia, Alabama, fair enough, Oregon, Ohio State, right? Obviously, Cincinnati.
close.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But obviously, Cincinnati, Michigan ended up being those other two teams. The first rankings, I believe, had, unfortunately, Mallory, Michigan State in them as well.
Oh.
But it just shows how much things can change, right? Obviously, this isn't set in stone, but get some little context for your season, right? I don't know. It's always interesting. All right, let's do it. Let's move on to our games of the week. Mallory, let's start off with the big one down in Austin.
All right, Craven, I think you're actually going to be at this game.
I will.
Aren't you? Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and give this game to Craven.
Best job in the world.
TCU taking on Texas this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ABC. Texas favored by 7. The over-under set at 65.
It is
Craven,
really
how you feeling?
ridiculous that I get paid to do this. Because I don't have to be, I don't have to like pay attention to just one team all the time. I'm
Right.
just like general assignment guy that goes around and watches whatever the best storyline is of the week. It's awesome.
You can pick where you're going on a Monday.
Yeah,
It's like, let's go to
I'm not go to Austin. That's fine. Whatever. Free trip to Austin. I'll take it. This one super intrigues me.
Yeah.
TCU's played excellent on the road. They've probably been as good, if not better, on the road than they've been at home for whatever reason. Some of that may be competition level, but still, they've proven the ability to play on the road. Texas has been excellent, especially on offense at home. This one feels like it's going to get super, super high pointsy. Like I know that Texas defense is improved, but you're not going to stop TCU over 4 quarters. TCU's offense is really good. Their defense is improved like Texas is, but they're not going to stop Quinn Ewers, Bijan Robinson, and that group for 4 quarters. Here's my deal. TCU is shown to be a super, super strong second-half football team. Texas, not so much.
Yeah.
TCU, though, struggles in the first half. Texas, super good in the first half. I'm not at all shocked if this one's 24-10 Texas at halftime. But to me, that does not mean anything.
Sure.
No.
And so we're going to learn if TCU can get out to a hot start, and we're going to learn if Texas can close a game, because the team who plays the better of their opposite half. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like TCU plays a better first half than Texas plays the second half, or vice versa. To me, that's going to dictate who wins this game, because they're both relatively equally talented.
Yeah.
I agree.
Who can play 4 quarters?
Yeah. I wonder, because typically the Texas collapse in the second half has come on the road, right? Now, I know last year was against Oklahoma State at home, so like it's not like they haven't collapsed at home. Typically, right, it's the team that we were presuming would win out last week, which is the team that just fumbles on the road, can't handle a hostile environment, things like that. The fan base has been really good this year at home, right?
Yes. Should be rocking again.
Should be rocking again.
Game day in town.
I was about to say this should be probably just below Alabama levels, because obviously Alabama brings another level of
It's going to be cold.
yeah, exactly.
They have all this hype too around.
I was a bit like
decommitments,
that's
all
a good
around.
point actually that we
mean,
should.
There's a
lot
lot
of
of
recruits in
buzz
town.
around.
Yes.
A lot of recruits, whole lot of buzz around this Texas team right now.
That is a good point that I do want to talk about.
Great point.
They just flipped Colton Vasek, who was a Texas legacy from Oklahoma to Texas. You mentioned it. They're going to have a host of recruits in town.
Yeah.
Is this kind of, and we've talked about the underlying numbers loving Texas, right? They're a top 10 team according to SP Plus, a lot of metrics.
Oh, that's
Yes, exactly. I think Vegas is obviously starting to lean that way as well. Do we see, and I think we can all agree, we have not seen that on-field Texas, right? We've seen spurts of them, maybe
yes.
maybe a quarter here, a couple drives there, obviously against Bama, little flashes of them. But we haven't seen that team really for a whole, even like an entire first half. I wouldn't say we've seen that team.
Oklahoma.
Sure, that's more of. I think that was more about Oklahoma also being
Sure,
that bad at the time.
sure.
But fair point taken. This feels like it's setting up to be a potentially either a homecoming for the new Texas, right? I'm not saying the phrase that everybody does as a meme now, but this could be like a homecoming for Texas because of the momentum in terms of recruiting, all that stuff, the way the numbers are leaning. Or this feels like a homecoming for a coming out party, for a real coming out party for TCU, right? Hostile environment, national audience. You're in the top, you're in the playoff. Here comes the marquee win potentially for them. So my gut feeling tells me to lean with the team that's proven for 4 quarters all season that they can get it done. However, the idea of them doing it in Austin for 4 quarters against a team that we know talent-wise is just probably on top of the Big 12 talent-wise on paper.
Oh, yeah.
That's another question for me, and I don't know if I can go that far that TCU is going to be
The
able to do
pressure
it.
just seems like it's going to be too much.
It's a massive
a lot of pressure.
Who has? Well, I'll ask this: on who?
I think TCU.
TCU.
Because Texas. Here's the thing:
I think pressure's more on Texas.
I don't think Texas has anything to lose.
Well,
they got every.
I think
I disagree.
I
completely.
think they have things to lose, but here's my thing.
I think Texas has everything to lose.
I think barring a Texas blowout loss, I think the tea leaves still lean recruiting wise, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You can just be like, man, there's something there in Austin, right?
A&M's proven though that you can sign a great recruiting class.
I mean, that's fair.
That ain't
That's
guaranteed.
100% fair. 100% fair.
Sark went 5-7 last year. If they lose this game, especially if they lose it in a similar fashion that they've lost other games, it's just going to be a here we go again. This is what Texas is. You're at 4
Yeah,
losses
that's a good
already.
point.
Sure.
Like TCU's playing with house money. Nobody expected this.
That's fair.
Sunday goes on the road. They lose to Texas. They're 9-1. They're still on the inside track to the Big 12 championship. If anything, that takes away some of the pressure and expectations, and they can just go be a 10-2 football team and play for the Big 12 championship. Texas is ascending. We always do this with Texas, right? Where they're on the doorstep to being back.
Right.
And then they do something that just like sends them back to the bottom floor. Well, that's this game.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Oklahoma, and they struggle against Iowa State, and then they lose to Oklahoma State. They 1 point against Alabama. They go on the road to Texas Tech, and they blow that lead.
Mm-hmm.
They finally go on the
Yeah.
road, and they beat Kansas State. Well, if they come home and lay an egg against TCU, who are they?
That's fair.
Like, what is this Texas program under Sark if he's 11-11 through 22 games and another 4-loss season with Baylor still on the schedule? You could get to 5 losses pretty easily. So I get what y'all are saying in terms of like
I guess in the moment right now.
Texas doesn't have as much to play for nationally. But in turn, like TCU could go 2-2 down the stretch, and that fan base is still ecstatic.
Yeah.
Everybody's still excited about Sonny Dykes. Texas goes 2-2 down the stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 7-5 again.
Sure. I could see that definitely. I will say, looking at the on-field matchup just before we move on, this does feel like a game that's going to be Quinn Ewers can't be off in this game because TCU's secondary is how you can get them, in my opinion. And if both these passing offenses are operating the way I think they can, I think that's the ideal strategy for both teams, right? It's Max Duggan hitting the vertical pass. I mean, again, we'll see about the status of Quentin Johnson, too. That's going to be a huge point in this. But I think the Texas secondary and the TCU secondary are gettable compared to their front sevens. I think their front sevens are going to be pretty solid against each other's run game, which is obviously very valuable to them offensively. But anyway, that was kind of just a brief look at the on-field matchup for them. Let's move on. Mallory.
All right, Ish, I told you this was your game of the week about 5 minutes ago.
Yes, you assigned me this
Baylor
one.
taking on Kansas State at home this Saturday, also at 6 p.m. You can watch it on FS1.
Yeah.
Baylor favored by 3. The over-under set at 53.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to look far. We just talked about what you have to play for, right? There's not much else to say about this game other than Baylor still controls its own destiny, right?
Yep.
Kansas, TCU, Texas coming up. It starts against Kansas State. If they win this game, everything's still on the table. Everything we talked about with Baylor, what's this team this year? This defense isn't as good. This offense looks a little weird. All of that's erased if they can pull out. If they go 2-1 down the stretch with this one, right? But I think this is the one they kind of have to get. And so I don't know. To me, it's a huge matchup, but there's not much to talk about in terms of what needs to be done or what this means for Baylor. It's all there. The road is still there to Arlington.
I think if you're Baylor, you're excited when you turn on the Texas-Kansas State tape because you saw Bijan Robinson and that offense run all over the Wildcats, especially in the first half, and you follow that recipe. That offensive line is becoming the offensive line, the dominant unit we thought it would be going into the year.
Sure.
It wasn't the first 6 weeks. And I am not a smart enough guy to know what's changed over the last 3 or 4 weeks, if it's just mentality, if it's schematic or what. But they've absolutely changed something up front, and they're doing a lot better job not only in run blocking but in pass protection, which has allowed Blake Shapen to become a much more efficient quarterback who isn't throwing interceptions, that has time to work his wide receivers down the field. As Ish said, Baylor controls their own destiny. I think Kansas State does as well for the most part, right? So kind of an elimination game for the Big 12 title this week. Baylor's at home. They haven't been at home for a little while. I'd imagine It's going to be, because they were at Tech and then at Oklahoma. So, now all of a sudden they come back home with something to play for. I bet they're rocking there at McLean Stadium. And this one feels like, if Deuce Vaughn has a better game than Richard Reese or Squirrel Williams, I think Deuce Vaughn and Kansas State wins. If Baylor's able to run the ball better than Kansas State, I think Baylor wins because neither quarterback's going to be asked to do a ton.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a grown man football game, and we're going to see kind of who the tougher team is, who the bully of the Big 12 is, because they're a mirror image in a lot of ways.
With that being said, is Adrian Martinez playing? Do you know? I know he was hurt a couple games ago. I don't know if he
played against Texas.
I believe he is.
He finished the game against Texas. So unfortunately for him, they blow out Oklahoma State with Skylar Thompson. He comes back. They lose to Texas. Well, sorry. I'll call Howard.
Live in the past.
Yeah, I know, right? There's like 2 names for Kansas State's quarterback. Anyway,
one of them's the OC now.
Exactly, yeah. But yes, Will Howard beats Oklahoma State, and then he comes back against Texas and kind of turns the ball over and loses the game. So narrative-wise, I think there may be some who started. It's going to be Adrian Martinez because he's been the quarterback all year. But I did find it unfortunate that they were on a bit of a pretty good roll with Will Howard, and then he steps in, and then all of a sudden he's like,
well, he's gonna redshirt. That
Martinez.
way he can Will Howard.
Will Howard,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's what they were worried about with that injury of this is gonna burn his red shirt, and
Right.
so Adrian's back, and now he doesn't have to play.
Yeah.
So he can keep that red shirt and be the starter for next year. But it was funny, the television broadcast for Texas Kansas State was pretty interesting, in that Will Howard and Adrian Martinez have become best friends.
Interesting.
And in today's modern climate of the transfer portal and everybody
Sure.
wants to start and stuff, it's just like a unique
rare.
story that, college athletics is still a lot more than just NIL.
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez, he's got a year left, maybe, I think,
This is
because
it.
this is his final year. I figured so. I
Yeah.
feel like he was at Nebraska for a while, and then
He's
been a
my
while.
age.
Yeah. Moving. Speaking of quarterbacks your age, Mallory, what's next?
That was good.
That was
a good
really
transition.
good. This one's my game of the week. North Texas playing UAB this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Guys, you can watch it on Stadium. Oh man, let's get it.
Is it a big game? Is it a big game in Conference USA between two teams moving to the American?
Stadium, baby.
Stadium.
Hit that stadium button.
UAB coming in as 6-point favorites. The over-under is set at 57.5. Well, if they win this game, North Texas win this game, they can punch their ticket to the Conference USA Championship, likely playing UTSA. Well, they are playing UTSA. However, it looks like North Texas is kind of banged up at that running back position, which is it's a little scary because UAB has a really good secondary. But I don't know.
33rd per EPA per pass against
Yes.
defensively. So
Yeah,
pretty
so
good.
it's
UTSA did okay.
UTSA did do okay. But I don't know. It worries me a little bit that they might not be able to get their running game going a little bit. And we might be expecting a little bit more from Austinani, which he has looked a lot better these past couple games. But it worries me that we may be asking too much of Austinani in this game. And when we ask too much of Austinani, things start to happen, like turnovers and mistakes. So I don't know. It worries me a little bit that we're a little banged up at running back position.
Yeah, this one's a tough one because, how long do you have to play well before you start shedding that skin? We had to do that with Spencer Sanders earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Good
right?
point.
Where it's like,
Right.
Your reputation and what we think about you, but then, how long, if it's just a game or two, okay. But now it's getting to 9 games, right? Of Austinani being a really good quarterback, especially when he plays Conference USA competition. I watched every snap of the UTSA UAB game, so I'm probably a little too close to the trees here. But for me, it feels like UAB's last hurrah was last week against UTSA. If they had won that game, they stayed in the conference mix. If they lost that game, they're essentially out of it because I think they have 4 conference losses now. They lose in double overtime after coming back from a 14-point deficit. It feels like UAB is a team that may not have a ton to play for this week.
Yep.
And maybe that loss against UTSA becomes 2 losses, whereas North Texas has everything in the world to play for. Like Mallory said, you win out, you're in it. I think Rice still has a path to the Conference USA championship.
They got to win out.
Like, if Rice wins out, technically they're a 2-loss Conference USA team, and they would have the tiebreaker over North Texas. But this feels like the biggest test left for North Texas, and if they pass it, they got 1 foot in to that conference championship door, and we're 1 week closer to the game I think we all want to see, and that's the rematch between North Texas and UTSA in the conference championship game.
Yeah, I think the thing that leans North Texas is Jacob Zeno looked really good. He's looked really good this season, looked really good against UTSA, but that also plays into the strength of the North Texas defense, which is that secondary.
Yeah.
They can absolutely make things difficult for him. If you get North Texas, it has to be more or less on the ground. And I know Dwayne McBride had a pretty good game last week as well for them on the ground. I just wonder if they try to test that secondary a little bit because of how Jacob Zeno's playing right now. He's playing really well, and I wonder if they maybe try to hit that secondary, or if they do, like, I think Dwayne McBride should have 30 carries in this game, right? I think absolutely. But I don't know. I wonder. That's all I'm saying is I wonder, because UTSA, they got in kind of a shootout last week. Frank Harris and Kavorian Barnes kind of pulled UTSA out of that. I think UNT would like for this to be definitely more of a scrappy affair as opposed to maybe a shootout, because like you mentioned, as well as Austin Aunie's played this year, has he played a game where he's had to keep up shot for shot with somebody, right? Offensively, yes, right? Against UTSA, Frank Harris was obviously there, but in a game where the game plan relies on him so much now, we know he can torch a secondary. We saw it last week against FIU, right? We know he can absolutely torch any secondary. I wonder if he can stay in a track meet with somebody when he's going to be with the banged up backfield that they have.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this version of him, though, is the version that's going to do it, right? If you would have asked me this in September, I said, hell no. There's no way UNT wins a track meet or whatever with UAB.
Why do we think it's got to be a track meet?
I'm saying if it gets to that. I'm not saying it has to be a track meet.
UAB, they scored a decent amount of points against UTSA last week, but 21 of them came with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter and after.
Sure.
I think North Texas defense can keep this thing at because that's 17 points or whatever.
Right.
Give me Austin Auntie to score 30.
No, I'm saying, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying if UAB wins this game, I think it has to be that type of game, right? And so that's my worry, right? I think UNT could win it multiple ways. I think he could potentially win a track meet. I think they want to absolutely control the game more methodically. I think UAB is going to try to make it a certain type of game, and then that's my question.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have. I think I would – for some reason, the numbers like UAB in this one, right? Parker's model has –
they're 6-point favorites.
Yeah. Parker's model has them 57%. I think it's partially them being a different team at home, obviously, as well, compared to the road.
Yes.
And we're getting to that point of year where, a lot of those stats – I hate to be this guy.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
It's meaningless, right?
Sure.
Because, a lot of what is on that chart for North Texas is, again, SMU and Memphis.
Sure.
And, that's not who UAB is.
Sure.
And so – I'd love to see those things over the last month or something like that, because we're getting to that stage of the year where it's too far away.
Right.
We're penalizing certain teams for getting blown out by P5 programs and stuff at this point. And it's that's not who they actually are in comparison to who they're playing on the field.
Yeah. And I think UAB was starting a different quarterback as well.
Right.
Hopkins was starting instead of Jacob Zeno.
Right.
So,
and this So
that's fair.
I mean, and again, too, we've talked about this before. When you watch a team only a few times, it depends on when you watch them.
True.
And I've seen UAB play UTSA and Rice.
Yeah.
And they stunk.
I was about to say
those games. UAB made that furious comeback and made it close last week against UTSA, but for 3.5 quarters, UTSA dominated that game. There's no reason UTSA doesn't win that one by double digits if the defense doesn't take its foot off the gas late. So I think they were helped a lot by the last 5 minutes and overtime of that game. It makes them look like a better program. And then I think gambling-wise, we're still in that point where we don't believe in North Texas.
Sure.
People still
we're still in that
Texas.
we're still in that skepticism, right? Yep. That eventually they come down to whatever we think they actually are. Right. So that's fair. They could answer a lot of questions. All right. Before we continue with our wide zone, let's get to a quick word from our sponsors.
Born and bred in Texas hits a little different, as it should. Texas loves doing business with fellow Texans. VCR Now takes its Texas roots as seriously as its many partnerships with schools and universities around the state. It's also why we're so proud to promote our brand in the pages of the Texas Bible, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and on the airwaves of Texas Football Today. Driven by producing quality broadcast video, state-of-the-art audio, and LED video scoreboards at affordable prices, VCR Now makes sure to listen to your needs in its athletic department before recommending the next best steps. Building great products is our business, and it's our focus on building meaningful, long-term partnerships with our clients that sets us apart. From our 24/7, 365-day help desk, the training lab in our hometown of Red Oak, or our sports marketing business plan that puts money back in the hands of our athletic departments we support, VCR Now is built to last. Reach out to us today at info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW. Again, that's info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW.
And we are back. And I know I mentioned that we're jumping into the wide zone for the rest of the week, but got to talk to a guy whose offense hung up 77 last week. Coach Rhett Lashlee of SMU. Coach, how are you game planning this week to do that just every week?
Well, we're game planning exactly like we did last week, but unfortunately, none of those points are going to transfer over to Saturday. So, that was definitely a wild one last week.
Had you ever been a part of anything like that? I mean, even back to your high school days or something like that. I mean, it felt like y'all were playing horse.
Yeah, it felt like Tanner and Toon were like, you imagine if old school Jordan and Kobe went at it and they were just both on fire, just back and forth. I mean, I actually have, not as a coach. I mean, the closest I know, I played in a couple games that were shootouts in the 50s as a coach, but never really as a player. My sophomore year of high school in the quarterfinals, we won a game 70-64. And we got down 24-0, and then we started firing away. It was 51-35 at half. And I think I had 8 touchdown passes, 670 yards because we couldn't stop them
amazing.
either, So that's the closest thing I can say I've been to besides that. It was, but never where, you have 12 real possessions and score 11 touchdowns. I've just never been a part of that.
You know how basketball players, when they're in the zone, they start saying that the rim starts looking like 8 feet wide? What did your play, What did your play sheet look like? Was it
didn't matter what was called. Tanner was going to make it right, it's like old school NBA Jam. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Oh, yeah.
He's heating up like we were on that from the jump. And, it's fun, obviously, offensively when you get in those rhythms where you just feel like everything's clicking and, the plan's working. And then when you call something that doesn't, the guys just make it right, and it's a little different when you're the head coach, though, and you've also got to stop them. And so, I don't know if I've ever scored 56 points and a half, much less gone into halftime, feeling like the game was very much not, still in doubt. So it was interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned it. How hard is it for the defense to play when everybody's scoring that fast? They're always on the field. It just feels like one of those games that once it starts, you just can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, we went right down and scored. They went right down and scored. We went right down and scored, and they did. So at that point, you had a feeling like, it was a tough matchup for us. I mean, Toon's phenomenal and Dell and all those guys. We knew that was going to be tough in general, but we were clicking. You could tell they were. You knew it was going to be a shootout. I think you just kept thinking at some point there's going to be some stops, and fortunately for us, that didn't happen much. And then I think the biggest key was, we got 2 back-to-back turnovers that were critical in the second quarter that helped us create a 2-touchdown cushion. And then both teams went back to just, nobody break and serve. And that ended up being the difference.
Before we move on to this week's game, Tyler Levine had a big role in that game for y'all as a running back. What does he offer this offense that, maybe wasn't there, that first half of the season?
Yeah. Well, it's been hard. I think our offensive line's played really well this year, and sometimes our running numbers don't say that, but we don't give up a lot of negative runs. But the running back position, we just had injury after injury. It's been hard to get any kind of consistency and any kind of rhythm with a back. And really, for the first time these last 2 weeks, Tyler's given us that, and played really well against Tulsa this week. He's given us just this physical, tough edge offensively. What's funny is the way we scored and the way we played, I mean, Tanner didn't even throw for 400 yards.
Right.
You know, he threw 37 passes. We ran it 46 times. And I think Tyler had over 100 of his yards in the second half. And I think, you know, the 3 turnovers to none, and then the fact that, you know, we were able to run the ball for over 250 yards, that really probably was the difference in a game that was pretty back and forth. And Tyler's really given us some consistency there.
Now, I wanted to ask you about this because we hadn't talked about it since it happened, but you coached against Sonny Dykes and Gus Malzahn in back-to-back weeks, 2 guys that obviously mean a lot to you in your coaching career. You know, what's the fun part of that? What's the non-fun part about, you know, facing guys that you're so familiar with and respect so much?
Yeah, I mean, the fun part is getting to coach them, you know, your team play in big games, you know, against a rivalry game like TCU, who's, you know, now 4th in the country, and no one's really played them any better than that. And then, you know, UCF as well, who's leading our league. The negative is we lost both games. So that's all that really stands out to me.
Yeah, I mean, what's that week like? I mean, do you talk to those guys going into the week, or does it kind of go radio silence more?
Yeah, you typically wouldn't talk to them. I didn't talk. Sonny and I didn't talk. The only reason I talked to Gus is because they had the hurricane that week and our game got moved. Typically, no. You know, I mean, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think, you know, like all of us, right? You get a new job and you think you know what it's going to be, and sometimes there's just things that are surprising. And I'm curious, like as a first-year head coach, you know, has there been a thing or two that has kind of popped up that maybe you didn't even think about, or that caught you off guard, or this takes more of my time than maybe I thought it would?
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty. If I sat and thought about it, I could give you a better answer. I mean, the one thing is it's just constant. You know, every day you have a staff of 40-plus people and 120 players. I mean, there's stuff all the time, big and small. But there's not one thing. You know, I think we've got a good staff, and our kids have been resilient. And there's, you know, we've handled everything that's come our way, whether it be a tough loss or injuries and all in between. And I don't know if there's any one thing that stands out other than, you know, it's just constant. And, you know, the good thing for me, you know, when the season starts, you just start focusing on ball. And there's a lot of other things that matter and that you could get distracted with and take your time to. And I've tried to just focus on what matters in this kind of 3-month window. And, you know, fortunately, I think our team's playing pretty good football right now.
After a big win, after an exciting win, one that everybody's talking about, I'm sure all the kids heard about it on campus and everything like that. How do you go about as a coaching staff just turning the page and getting them to concentrate on a team that in South Florida that's been struggling?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think, you know, on one hand, it's great for our program to play in a game like that. I know, you know, we'd like to not give up that many points, but you know, to get a win in the way we did and have your team and your players recognized nationally is great. We're playing good football. We've won 3 out of our last 4 games. We've had to rebound from a lot of things, different things this year, and find a way to rally each week to come back and play. And our kids have done that every time. So I got confidence in that. But this is different. You know, the funny thing about South Florida is they've got good players. They played Cincinnati to 4. They scored over 30 on Tulane. They were tight with Houston for 3 quarters. They were a field goal away from taking Florida to overtime at Florida. Like they've been in a lot of close games. They just haven't won any of them. And now they've got a coaching change. So there's just so much unknown there. It's a different, you know, feel for us this week. You know, we're feeling good that we've won, but at the same time, you know, none of what we did Saturday transfers over. We can't transfer one offensive point to this week. We started 0. We got to go earn everything. And defensively, we get to clear it, you know, and none of that transfers over. And so how do we rebound? How do we go? You know, we just tried to really tell them that we need to finally put our first 4 quarters of complete football together, offense, defense, special teams this week, because I still don't think we've done that. And so, you know, that's our goal. That's our challenge. And, you know, hopefully our guys will respond. I have no doubt they will because they have all year.
You know, last question, you kind of mentioned it. South Florida fired their head coach, Jeff Scott, earlier in the week. I have some familiarity with this just from covering the state. Charlotte fired their coach earlier in the season, then played Rice that week and just beat the brakes off of Rice in that week. So I'm curious, like, as a coach, how hard is it to prepare for a team when you're not really sure what's going to stay the same, what's going to change on Saturday?
It's really hard. I mean, to your point, I think the coaches that there's been mid-season firings this year, the interim coaches have a winning record, and they've won a lot the game right after. And, you know, it just gives a freshness and a newness to that team, whoever they are. You know, so I have no idea. I mean, for us defensively, It's similar because their OC's Travis Trickett. He's a really good football coach. He's still there. In terms of what they're going to do on defense, they let the defensive coordinator go. The head coach is gone. You really don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get something different than what you've seen. So it's almost the same but harder for the first game of the year, because you go into the first game of the year and there's a lot of unknown. You got to be able to adjust, but you have an idea usually because you know who the staff is. Well, in this case, we have no clue. And so we're going to have to start fast and play well early and be able to adjust to all the probably different things we're going to see from a schematic standpoint, and the fact that they literally have nothing to lose. So, they may go for it every single time and run a bunch of trick plays. You just don't know. So there's a lot of unknowns. It's unusual. It's unique. And we got to find a way to overcome it.
It's never good to get fired, but if you're a defensive coordinator, the week before you play a team that just scored 77 points seems like a decent time.
You guys.
To get out of there. Coach, we really appreciate the time as always. Safe travels the rest of the week and good preparation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I think you appreciated that last one. That was really good.
That was amazing.
Thanks again to head coach Rhett last
Are
year.
we sure he got fired?
I was about to say, I think he just
It's like, hey,
I'm done.
Y'all can say y'all fired me, but I got some back spasms.
Did y'all see that?
I'm not going to be around.
Yeah, he's like, Tanner Mordecai didn't even hit 400 yards, and they scored 77. I ain't doing that.
He calls his agent. He's like, hey, is this stuff guaranteed for the rest of the year? Because if so, I'm about to go get myself fired.
He's great.
Walks in naked.
Exactly. Just does fired. Well, no, that's fired for cause.
That's true.
So no, he can't do that.
That's true.
That voids the contract. So there you go.
Jeez.
All righty, let's get to the wide zone officially. Mallory, get us back on track.
Oh, that's my job here. That is my single job here is to get you guys on track.
Mom, steer it.
All right, let's get into it. The wide zone, Texas Tech taking on Kansas at home this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Texas Tech coming in as 4-point favorites, and the over-under is set at 65.
I'm scared for my Red Raiders.
I was about to say the same thing.
We were talking about, man, they're a lot better than we thought they'd be at the beginning. And sure, I think they're a lot better than we thought they'd be this year. I think that record might not say it, though. It's scary.
I always thought this would be a tough year. I think in the magazine we have them 5-7.
Sure.
They just have a tough out-of-conference schedule. Stealing that win against Texas feels like it readjusted expectations, and that probably wasn't the smartest.
Yeah.
They've lost 4 out of their last 5. This one's in Lubbock. They played a lot better at home, obviously, than they have it on the road. They're 0-4 on the road, but all 4 of those road losses have been against ranked teams. It's North Carolina State, Oklahoma State when they had Spencer Sanders, Kansas State, TCU. So, you would think, after playing Baylor, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, this one feels like more of a winnable game. This is more on our level here. I just am super fascinated at what they do at quarterback. Just they've had so many guys coming in and out with injuries, nagging injuries and stuff. If I'm Zach Kittley, and I know Zach Kittley knows more about football than I will ever pretend to, but you just run the ball, man. You just run the ball. The first half against TCU, they ran the ball 22 times. They only ran it 11, and they were right there. And then all of a sudden, it just felt like they got too pass-heavy when Tyler Shuck came into the game. I know it's not fun. I know it's probably not what Zach Kittley likes to do, but just with your offensive line not being great in pass blocking and then your running backs being pretty good, it feels like one of those games where you just run the ball 50 times and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll say the same thing because you know damn well Kansas is going to run the ball on your ass. Like they ran the ball for 351 last week against Oklahoma State, and I know Oklahoma State's really banged up, right? They're definitely not. They're too deep shattered, right? There was a good tweet going around saying like you could tell who's paying attention to the Big 12 for the whole season versus the past 2 weeks based on their reactions to the past scores. Oklahoma State, I get it, but still, 350 on the ground, almost 8 yards a carry. Devin Neal had 220 on the ground. And guess what? That front seven for Tech has been a problem in the run game. If you can game plan around Tyree Wilson, right, which is what TCU did, they basically said, hey, don't run at that guy. And so that ended up working because guess what? He's an NFL caliber talent. And if you run around him, you're not dealing with probably as much NFL talent around him. So if Kansas is going to come out and run the ball right at you, and you cannot try to basically make up time, right? If Kansas eats up a drive, you can't try to get it back really quickly and say, no, we got to strike. You probably got to box with them a little bit, right? I know it's
Give your
probably
defense some breaks.
I was about to say, give your defense some breaks, and I know it's anti to what Zach Kitley's probably done his whole career, but you have a solid running game, man.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned it last week against TCU. They had a solid running game that they just kind of threw out the window eventually in the second half. So
And Tech has been the worst team in Texas turnover margin.
yes.
Go
Yeah.
win a turnover battle against a backup
Exactly.
quarterback for Kansas, force them into some turnovers, and see if you can come out on the right side of that one, because they've been battling against turnovers, it feels like, every game.
Sure, 100%. And this is a defense that can get caught, right? Kansas is not a good defense, so get some confidence going.
Yep. All right, let's keep it rolling. Texas A&M playing at Auburn this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. You can watch it on SEC Network. Texas A&M not favored. Auburn coming in as 2-point favorites. The over/under set at 49.
Y'all want to
This
know?
sucks. This game is not going to be fun. Gross.
Sucks.
That's disgusting.
Mark that. Mark that. Keep that soundbite for something fun. You know how bad it's going in College Station to be an underdog to this Auburn team?
Yeah.
That is so
Cadillac
humbling.
Williams is the head coach for Auburn.
I was about to say, shout out Cadillac Williams.
He'd probably be the third best player on the football field if he stepped on it right now.
He might be.
I do think the flu stuff last week was a legitimate issue for A&M.
Yes,
You're lost with over 30 players. When Connor Wigman was in there playing, the offense looked a lot better. Evan Stewart's starting to emerge as a true number one guy. Donovan Green's been excellent at tight end. The defense can't get any worse. I don't think Auburn's Ole Miss,
Right.
And so I think they keep them in the game a little bit. For me, this is about the Texas A&M offensive line. If they can go on the road and give Wegman some time and give the running game Devon Achane some space, I think A&M wins this game, wins it pretty easily, honestly. But if the A&M can't handle Auburn's front four, front seven, which is probably the strength of Auburn's team, it's going to be a real close, ugly, battle out, take the under type situation.
Yeah, I do think we're going to need that soundbite for Mallory's "This Sucks" game of the week.
Yeah.
Just to drop this sucks.
Yeah.
Right
Whatever the
before-
final score is, I'm just going to quote it and just put, this sucks.
If we were AM radio, that would get played like every 5 minutes.
Literally.
So Robbie Ashford, their freshman quarterback for Auburn, barely has a 50% completion percentage, right? This is not a quarterback who should be able to take advantage of this A&M defense. Regardless of who's still suspended, who's out, right? Hopefully the flu's gotten a lot better, so you get more of a first choice roster on your hands. I agree. I think this is more of a. I think last week definitely said more about the flu than it did about exactly where that A&M team is. I don't think they're very good this year, but I do think they're better than Auburn. I will also say we talked about Texas being the new hotness right now in recruiting. Somebody who needs to kind of at least show that they're something is A&M, because they lost Anthony Hill.
Yep.
And they got to hold on to David Hicks. I'm not saying, again, I'm not reporting anything, right? He's still committed for all we know, but as Craven knows, the tea leaves and the currents get flowing, and one little trickle away from College Station could turn into a little bit more of a river. So that's all I'm saying.
If you ever want to know what the teenagers think about programs, you look at recruiting momentum.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't always equal on-field success. Ask Texas over the last 12 years. Ask A&M this year. Right? I'm not saying that means anything, but it definitely tells you perception.
Yep.
And right now the perception is things are going bad in College Station. Things are going bad in Norman. Texas is joining the SEC. That chip's gone. And now everybody's on an even playing field. It's up to A&M to kind of capture some momentum back and be like, it's like the Monty Python thing. I'm not dead yet, type of situation this week. And losing to Auburn, all of a sudden it gets super weird, right? So you got to win this game, because then you're going to have a winnable game next week against UMass. Then anything maybe can happen against LSU, and so if you're A&M, it's just like put duct tape on the holes and see if you can get this ship to the harbor.
Basically.
Yeah. Question, is Zach Calzada still on the roster for Auburn?
I think he's still on the roster.
Yeah,
I think he was out for the year, I want to say.
Oh,
He's injured
man.
again.
Yeah, he got hurt,
Dang it. I was looking
which is why
forward
they've
to
been
that.
starting Ashford, or what? I forgot. I just said his name. Robbie Ashford. Yeah, the freshman. So yeah, has been. I mean, there's a reason why Brian Harsin got fired. It has not been great in Auburn this year.
I don't know,
so.
Zach Calzada could have changed that program. I don't know.
Listen, also I will say on the
got
Zach
8-4.
Calzada thing. Speaking of people who look a lot better in retrospect because like everybody
Yeah.
was like, oh, if we didn't have Zach Calzada starting, we would be whatever last year.
Right.
It's a common theme for Jimbo quarterback.
Right.
It is,
It's like was
He
it-
looks better now that he's gone.
if we
Yeah.
had, well, I'm not even saying he was that great at Auburn, but I'm just saying like people were like they were blaming him for
I
why they were
know.
losing last year. It's like,
nah, y'all
we're-
just suck.
Would things have just been right? No, exactly. It's like would
Y'all
things
are
have been
just
better
bad.
if anybody else was there. So I think Zach Calzada is somebody who definitely looks a little bit better in a
Yeah.
light. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but I don't think a lot of the problems last year
Need
were
one of those
just
gifs like Jimbo's ex-quarterbacks, my ex-girlfriends. You know, like getting better after they leave. You know, type of deal.
We need to tweet that out. That's hilarious.
I like that.
Let's move on. SMU, you just heard it from Coach Lashlee himself, taking on South Florida this Saturday at 11 a.m. You can watch it on ESPNU. SMU coming in as 17.5-point favorites. The over-under set at 73.
Rashee Rice is creeping up on the all-time leading
He's
receiving
fantastic.
yard situation at SMU, which pretty good list.
I was about to say
Pretty
that's
good list.
NFL
SMU's
caliber,
had some-
recent NFL
Right,
caliber
yep.
talent.
Over the last decade, I think Alabama's the only team with more NFL wide receivers with catches in the league over the last decade. So kind of a wide receiver UG5 situation going on at SMU. Really the only thing to watch for because they should boat race
I
a
was about
South
to say.
Florida team without a head coach. But as Rhett Lashlee just mentioned to us, that's crazy that interim head coaches have a winning record. You know, and so
That is crazy.
you know, we saw it with Charlotte against Rice, so there's always that kind of situation looming there. But one more win for SMU gets them bowl eligible, and that's a big win for SMU and Rhett Lashlee in year one.
Yep, and especially after a confidence-boosted Tanner Mordecai following last week.
Man, they're flying right now.
Yeah, and the running game rejuvenated with Tyler Levine. Should be good to go. You know, that's kind of the only thing we're kind of hinting on.
I
Is
didn't
that
text Joe Hoyt because, like, I want him to score, like, 50 against South Florida, and then the first question in the press conference being like, Coach, offense.
Are you disappointed that you didn't score?
What's happening? What's happening? Tanner Mordecai, more incompletions than touchdowns. Can you talk about
his
kinda-
regression?
Yeah, just
His
like,
regression from last
like,
week.
is there a quarterback controversy back at the Hilltop?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so should be an easy win. Basically,
Yep.
we're just saying the interim coach thing is like the only thing South Florida holds on to.
Keep
so.
your flashlight close. Just watch out.
I think
Exactly.
South Florida's so bad that it's just not even going to make a
I
difference.
was like, that
They should
program
be
has
fine.
been pretty
Yeah.
bad.
Because the thing is, like, they surprise them and score 40. Well, fine.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
We got it.
So, anyway.
All right, let's keep rolling. Rice playing at Western Kentucky this Saturday at 1 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. Western Kentucky coming in as favorites, 13-point favorites. The over-under is set at 62. This one feels important for Rice.
This feels contract extension-y.
Yeah.
Yep. This
If
is
Rice
important.
is going to get one,
It's going to be this one.
it feels like it's going to be this one.
Yeah.
North Texas is playing out of its mind right now.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that good.
Maybe if North Texas falters and then they're out of the conference championship race in that last, maybe you can steal one there. Maybe UTSA's already clinched a spot and you can steal one there. But like
Right.
on paper, Western Kentucky's not playing that great of football lately. And Rice, coming off of a last-second win, plenty of confidence. They know what's out there in front of them. They're absolutely going to have more to play for than Western Kentucky. And so I think some of that works in their favor. Again, we could just copy and paste this every single week.
Yeah.
TJ McMahon just can't turn over the ball.
Yep.
Because that defense, Rice defense, not very good. They're the worst scoring defense in the state. And so it's going to be up to the offense to make plays, to be explosive, but to also not give over possessions to Western Kentucky because the defense simply isn't good enough to deal with it.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to be paying attention to this game. Like, I'm actually kind of excited for this game because I want it to happen so bad. Because I think I tweeted out a stat last week that the last time they made a bowl game or were eligible for a bowl game was back in 2014 when they played Hawaii.
Yep.
So it's been almost a decade. So
And it feels like
let's hope.
It feels like this team deserves that
They
validation.
deserve- they really
right?
do.
They're
Yeah.
clearly
Absolutely.
a better team than
Yeah.
they've been in recent years.
They're
so.
going in the right direction.
This would just be that validation for that program as a whole and, potential recruits they come see in the next future or so.
Yeah.
But,
No.
yep.
We're turning Mallory into one of us.
Yeah.
We're
hoot
talking
hoot.
about being excited over a Rice Western Kentucky game.
Let's go,
TCU,
baby.
Texas, nah, baby. I'm turning on Rice in Western Kentucky. Give me some Conference
Good.
USA
That'll
football.
be your game Sunday to recap for.
Bet.
Let's go.
get it. Only if Rice wins. Don't give it to me if Rice doesn't win. If Western Kentucky wins, I ain't talking about
48-7. Go.
Oh god, yeah.
Malpow.
All right, let's move on. Let's keep it rolling. Houston playing Temple at home this Saturday at 2 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. Pretty easy. Houston coming in as 20-point favorites. Temple sucks. Over under set at 57.
She really is turning into one of us.
You guys are just
Wow.
You got an effect on me.
I will say, with this game, yes, Houston should be a clear favorite. This shouldn't be close. Just what does Houston look like after last week, man?
I'm so over talking about Houston.
Oh, I am too. But I'm
They're
just
so
wondering,
great,
like,
it's
how do you,
wild.
like, I don't know. How do you, like, if you're Doug Belk's defense, you just be like, guys.
How do you give up
I don't know.
77 points?
Right, exactly. No, that's my thing. Is like, what's the team talk after that? Is that just like, I'm not talking to y'all, that never happened? Which is probably would be my team talk. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
never talk about this again.
I think you got to burn the tape and move on.
Sure.
However, if I was a coach, I would have never moved on. Like,
Sure.
I would have made
That's
them watch. I would have
demoralizing.
made them watch it every day, all week. Like,
Or at
okay,
least, like-
practice is done. Now
Yeah.
we're going back and we're watching every snap from this game.
Also-
It's like, what in the world happened?
Also, if I'm the freaking defense, or if I'm the freaking offense,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my defense like, you're kidding me. We
Yeah.
put up 60
Dude,
plus
I was
points
about to say,
and we
the
lost.
offensive
You're
staff should lead
kidding
the
me.
defensive meetings all week. He's like, look,
Yes.
and this is when we scored, and y'all still couldn't stop them.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
pointing
pissed.
at the screen.
Like,
Clayton Tune threw 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And when you read the game recaps, it says 3 interceptions thrown by Tanner Mornick or by Clayton Tune.
Yeah.
Helps Houston or helps SMU win 7. Like what? He threw 7 touchdowns.
It's like that. It's like
wasn't
that
the
50
three
Cent clip I
interceptions.
can't say verbatim. It's like, what are you saying me for?
yeah.
What are you saying me?
Like,
Why am I here?
Like, what are you doing? Like,
Oh.
excuse me?
Yeah, I'm mad.
Yeah. And that I don't. It's just if you're Houston,
Yeah.
how do you stay together for these last 3 games?
Yeah.
Because you don't have a coach who does that.
Right.
Right, like I'm a Holgerson guy. This isn't me insulting Holgerson,
No.
but he's not a kumbaya, bring everybody together.
He's
let's
like, hey,
hold
remember when
hands
y'all
and-
gave up 77?
Yeah, Holgerson's
Yeah.
going to be the one that's like me, that's walking in the
Yep.
room and just be like 77. You know, like what are you doing? Like, you know, no Red Bull for anybody on that side of the room. Like,
I know.
he's just not that guy.
I want to
So
be
it's like,
I want to be a fly on the wall.
how
on that.
does
Yeah.
Houston handle these last 3 games? I really have no idea.
Yeah.
Are they? How many wins do they have?
They have 5.
They have 5, so they,
They
need
could,
one more.
they could win 8 games,
Yep,
and we're
yep.
still like, what's wrong with
What
Houston?
is? What is?
That's
so,
the thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, Rice has so much to play for.
Sure.
Yep.
SMU has so much to play for.
Mm-hmm.
Houston doesn't care about a bowl.
I was about to
No.
say.
None of these kids on this roster care about a bowl because they entered with much higher expectations. Than
I'm going to
Right.
look up right now.
That's a really good
I'm
point.
going to look up
Yeah.
right now
like
who.
I like hamburgers,
yeah.
but if we were going to Bob's Steak and Chop House,
Right.
and I knew that's where we were going all month,
Mm-hmm.
and we got there and they were like, "Well, the only menu items we have available is hamburgers." I'm going to hate that hamburger,
Yeah.
even though that's probably one of the greatest hamburgers I've ever had in my life.
Right.
That's a really good
That's
point.
how Houston feels about getting to bowl eligible.
You want
So,
you
like,
want to
they just don't have
Right.
they just don't have anything to play for.
So you want to beat down this drum even more. So remember we were talking New Year's 6 expectations, right? Being that dark
Jeez.
horse
Yep.
college football. Brett McMurphy has them projected right now on November 9th to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana. That's what you're playing
Playing
for right
who?
now. Who cares, first of all, but Louisiana.
Also terrible. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Team that lost to Rice.
Yes. I
So,
love
like,
it.
yes, they could win 8 games, and their reward is Shreveport.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they just got hammered.
We
in their
use
bowl game,
the
'cause they
word-
make it like they're just gonna get smoked.
Oh,
'cause they don't give
Louisiana
a
would
crap.
smoke them.
Yeah.
Louisiana would smoke them because Louisiana would show up wanting to play in a bowl game.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Houston would show up with 22 players in Turkey Leg Hut.
Clayton Tune got lost on the bus
And
somehow.
by the way,
they
Although the
issues-
Maddox
didn't
Cop would
care.
be in that game. not
Ish
Clinton, too.
uses the word reward loosely.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 100%. Yeah, that is your quote unquote reward.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Like, yeah.
All right.
Dana would like absolutely use that. It's like, look, y'all didn't get it done. We're going to Shreveport. Like, it's his version of turning the car around. It's like y'all wanted to go to the Sugar Bar, now we're going to Shreveport.
It makes them leave 2 days early. It's like, Coach, we don't have to be there till Wednesday. No, we're leaving Monday morning.
We're spending a whole day in Monroe.
Yeah, y'all are going to figure out how good y'all have it here in Houston.
All right. Let's keep it rolling. UTSA hosting La Tech this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. UTSA coming in as 18-point favorites. The over/under set at 68.5. This one probably isn't going to be too exciting.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern as a UTSA person here
Healthy.
is defense.
Yep.
Yeah, health.
Yep.
Health. Rashad Wisdom not being back there at safety hurts them for multiple reasons. One, he's really good. He's the preseason defensive player of the year, leading tackler, probably in program history, I think, at this point. He's also the organizer.
Yeah.
He's also the guy on the back end that makes sure everybody's in the right spot and the coverages are communicated correctly and the checks are done and the audibles and this guy's motioning and that changes this. They didn't have that last week, and when UAB got into that hurry-up offense, that's when UTSA played its worst defense because they didn't have that guy back there to be, the quarterback of the defense. And so, with La Tech being an air raid team, that's the concern for me, is that UTSA's defense doesn't do well on the back end communication-wise and gives up a lot of points here.
And I feel like if you're UTSA, you're kind of looking ahead a little bit. You're looking to the conference championship. You're looking to get healthy for the postseason because, you're in already. You don't have much to play for in these next couple games because you're already in. You're already secured. You need to get healthy before those couple of games. So they're probably not. You go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think this is one of the first games in a while where also you're UTSA and you're like, because you've been so banged up, because you've been kind of having to move so many things around, this is the first game in a while where I don't want to say you can kind of relax, but like.
Take a breath, yeah.
Yeah, because North Texas, you mentioned, either in some ways potentially more talented or at the very least as talented, right, on the field. Obviously healthier, too. UAB last week, right? Obviously you controlled that game, but still probably as talented as you, definitely healthier than you. La Tech, okay, you're more talented, right? You're probably not as healthy, but it's definitely not a game that you're
stressing about.
You're not.
You're at home too.
I was
you're
about to say.
Alamo
I know
Dome.
Jeff Traylor's a crazy person. How you mentioned he hates football, so we're
gonna lose by
he just stresses
La
out.
Tech by
He
30.
just stresses out about everything. But if you're Jeff Traylor, you probably get 4 hours of sleep instead of 3 this week, right? You're probably like, hey, we're playing a team that we're probably more talented and deeper than.
Yes.
Honestly, I think just knowing Coach's psyche,
Yeah.
I think he's getting 2 because he's worried about what you're talking about.
Sure, exactly.
He's like, man, everybody in the locker room is like, we don't have to play as hard this week. We're going to be a lot better than them. We're at home. He's going to be seeing that UNLV game in his head.
Yeah.
The Southern Miss game in his head.
Right.
Like,
he doesn't see us as Jeff Traylor's. They're such a good team that Jeff Traylor's going to have them just mow this team down.
Right.
He's been like, no, man, this is they're going to be off their game.
I don't know where to find motivation here.
Yeah, right.
And he needs to be like, this team's going to beat your ass.
Right, exactly.
And
I'm such a good coach that they're going to play no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what he's worried about this week, and I think it's a legitimate worry because UTSA is not far and away better than everybody. Just to they're not Alabama.
Right.
So they need to go. They need to show up. They need to play. They need to play hard. And then hopefully you have a big enough lead in the second half to where then you can start.
You can rest a little bit.
You got as a coach, you go to your team and go, hey, you want a break? Go be up 30-0.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Then I'll give you one.
Yep.
All right.
Speaking of teams that are not going to be up 30-0, Mallory, what is the last game?
All right. Let's get on to it. Texas State playing at South Alabama this Saturday at 4 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. South Alabama is coming in as 16.5-point favorites. The over/under set at 47.5.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Why'd you scoot in closer to me?
Because I want to hear what you have to say.
Look.
You mean to turn you up a little bit?
This is
Let me turn you up a little bit.
Ish's corner.
This is
Ish's
all
corner.
I have to say about this. We are big Jake Spavital fans on this show.
Huge.
100%.
We need the one shot.
I hope he stays in the state wherever if he's not at Texas State, which I hate to say it, writing's on the wall, probably not going to be. I hope he stays in the state, right? Honestly, he'd be a great somebody to have around professionally, personally, all that stuff. This feels like the end of the line. We thought it would be. There was an inkling that maybe last week, right, at Monroe, bad program who you probably should never fall behind against in terms of the pecking order of the Sun Belt, fell behind. I think it was very telling that Kelly Damphus, the new university president, was at that game. Somebody who we've praised for being consistently just a PR machine.
Yes.
Did not tweet until Monday, right? He was at that game Saturday, and his tweet was very telling. It ended with the phrase soul searching going on.
Oh.
So again,
Sleepless nights.
soul searching, which is not something you want your university president tweeting about, especially the guy who's seemingly never unhappy about anything, which is what his Twitter account's been more or less since he's taken the job.
Yikes.
South Alabama is a massive favorite. They are a program in the mix of that Sun Belt that we want Texas State to eventually punch into, right? That competitive top half. If Texas State loses this game, they officially are eliminated from bowl eligibility. I think that was the last thing they're holding on to in terms of making a decision. There's no recruiting momentum. There's no recruiting class to save. Craven brought up the one good point, which I think may be a reason why they might not do it, is because who the hell takes over as interim, because the defensive coordinator's last name is the same as the head coach's first name,
Right.
who is also the offensive coordinator.
Right.
So who is left on the staff if you make a move there?
Right. Yeah, firing one guy is basically firing 3.
Yes. And that's, I don't know, man. I like Brian Gamble, but does Brian Gamble take over as interim head coach, you know? So, yeah, this feels like there may be some news on Sunday. Again, this isn't me reporting anything. I know people like to think any of my opinions are absolute, like, any journalist that says any opinion, all of a sudden they construe that as fact or reporting. That's me 100% speculating. I'm just reading.
This is how these
scenarios.
things go.
I was about to say, this is how these things go. You give them, okay, the bowl is the mission, right?
Yep.
So eventually you give them until the mission is impossible.
Yep.
And then you may potentially make a move.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So.
And in today's world, you want to get ahead of it.
Sure. Exactly.
You know, you can't wait until the very last second anymore because you want to salvage a little bit of a recruiting class or at least get a head start on the transfer portal and putting together a staff and seeing what you want to run and who you want to put together. And so it does feel like once they get to 7 losses, especially the way they've gotten to 7 losses, you know, this isn't a 5-7 type team where it's like, man, they were 1 or 2 plays away and next year they're going to figure this out. They may win 9 games next year.
Right.
It was a continuation of the same problems despite a new quarterback on the same side of the ball that your head coach is the expert of.
Yep.
And so there's just not much to hold on to and hang on to and go like, oh, that's going to get changed with one more offseason.
Yes. Mike Craven, you were looking before the show. One last point on this. How many commits does Texas State have for the 2023 football class?
0.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Recruiting classes ranked above Texas State in the state. Sam Houston, Tarleton,
Oh.
UTEP.
Yikes.
So there you go. And that will do it for us.
No, we got one more game. Got one more game. Rutgers taking on Michigan State this Saturday at 11 a.m., baby. Michigan State coming out as 10-point favorites. The over-under set at 40.5. If Michigan State doesn't go out there and dominate in all 3 phases of this game, I will be turning into a Rutgers fan. Go green.
Mallory, I've never been prouder of you.
You know
Go
where we
green.
stand on this
Go
show.
white.
No offense, Mallory. You know where we stand on
Do
this
not
show.
say go Rutgers at the end of this show or I will cut your mic off. Do not do it. This is the only week you cannot do that.
Oh, thank you for listening or watching. If you are watching the live stream, remember, please subscribe. Pay attention to
like
us
that.
every time you see that notification come up on Wednesdays on any of your social media feeds at 2 p.m. to watch us live. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. Be sure to watch along for the Sunday recap edition, which Mallory will be giving you a very in-depth breakdown of Michigan State and Rutgers.
Yes, sir.
With that being said, we have interviewed 12 of the eventual 13 FBS head coaches. Shout out Sam Houston State, who is recruiting better than Texas State currently. Jimbo Fisher, please give us a call.
Go Rutgers.
Jesus.